Well, again, my name is Christopher Bruce. I'm the Policy and Advocacy Director of the ACLU of Georgia. I'm also a local black man who is happy to be here and see this room filled with people who care about their legislature, okay? We're gonna have a fun-filled, packed, open discussion about what happened in the 2024 Georgia legislature. So next up, I'm gonna bring up the Executive Director of the ACLU of Georgia for a welcome. Then we will get into the mission and statements of all the other organizations, and then we're gonna get into what happened in the legislature. So please welcome Ms. Andrea Young.
As Chris said, thank you all for coming out. You know, we are a mighty group. These folks during the legislative session do amazing things, and we do it with the staff, we do it with the volunteers, and Georgia would be a very different place. You know, these are organizations that have been around for decades. The ACLU in Georgia just celebrated its 60th anniversary last year. The NAACP has us beat 1917. So these are the legacy organizations that have done the work before Georgia was cool, before Georgia was considered a battleground. They created the battleground. They created the opportunity. So we are really pleased that you all are here to hear about the work around criminal legal system reform, voting rights, privacy and surveillance, LGBTQ rights, reproductive rights, and so many others that we have to fight every day. The right to protest, every session we have to fight, we have to defend. Every session we have to defend our rights to vote. And so these groups working together have a tremendous impact on the lives that we live in Georgia. I often say to folks, you know, everybody, just about everybody I love lives in Fulton County. And so what happens here is everything from my dad to my granddaughter. And so what happens here is of vital importance to me. And I want to thank all of you for being on the front lines, for caring, and for making Georgia someday we shall overcome. Chris?
Amazing words. Thank you so much, Andrea. Before I go any further, again, we all care about our community, but not all of us have put our names on a ballot to actually carry this fight into the legislature. So if I could at this time, are there any elected officials in the building? Could you please stand up? There we go. There we go. So these are people who don't just stay in the Capitol all day. They actually come to community events to talk to you personally. So I'm not going to introduce them. I want them to introduce themselves after Andrea Young says something.
Just take a point of personal privilege so that I can go home tonight. My husband, Jerry Thomas, also lives in Georgia and is one of the people most important to me in my life.
Y'all don't know Jerry, he has that great coat on, this sports coat. Me and Jerry are the same size. In fact, I think Jerry might be a little smaller than me. I need to get on a bike and keep exercising. Representative Derek Jackson, could you please say a few words?
Thank you, Chris. Hello. Is this ATL? They say it's dangerous to give a politician a microphone. I am one. Hey, I'm Derek Jackson. I represent the 68th district. That's South Fulton, the city of South Fulton, Union City, Fairburn, and then I go into Fayette County, Peachtree City, city of Fayetteville, and Tyrone. The 2 points I'll make is this. As a retired naval officer, I did 22 years in the Navy, and I retired 19 years ago, although I don't look it, but I feel it. And we have a serious election this year, ladies and gentlemen. A serious, I cannot overstress this. My wife and I, we have 4 girls and 3 boys and 1 grandson. No, I didn't stutter, right? And all I want for my 4 daughters is to have the same rights as my 3 sons. We just recognize Equal Pay Act, 60 years, and we still have a gap for women. And that's incredulous to me. And so it's one thing to have these laws that we pass every year at the federal and state level, but there's nothing if we're not changing the temperature in our society. There's no reason why my 4 daughters do not have the opportunity to earn the same amount of money as my 3 sons. And so we have to change that. And the only way, which brings me to my second point, we have to vote. Folks are counting on you not to vote. It's the keystone in our democracy. And if we don't vote, we may wake up like we did in November 2016. And that was a horrible feeling, a horrible feeling. And so now is the opportunity for us to make sure that we tell our friends, our family members, our neighbors, those who we like, Andre, and those who we don't like, right? We were with the First Lady this past Monday down in Columbus, and she said something that was very strong to me. She said, if we don't, who will? Dr. King is no longer here. Coretta Scott King is no longer here. Rosa Parks is no longer here. A lot of the giants of the past are gone. We still have some, my dear brother, Ambassador Young, but they passed the baton to us. Now it's up to us to make sure that the democracy that we fight for today is available for my 5-year-old grandson. And so if there's anything that we're going to be talking about tonight, yes, it's great for us to do a recap, but this project 2025 is real. And I know you haven't had the chance to digest it like I have, all 920 plus pages, but they're after everything that we believe in, everything that this democracy stands for. Is it perfect? Far from it. But they have several chapters in there that they're going to dismantle the 19th Amendment. They have everything in there that's going to dismantle the 14th Amendment and the 15th Amendment. And if you don't think that is true, where's Roe v. Wade today? Where is affirmative action today? A lot of things 10 to 15 years ago that we would have said, you're like, oh, that's not true. These things been around for decades, and they're gone now. Affirmative action is gone. Roe v. Wade is gone. They're going after reproductive freedom and some other civil liberties. So, again, I told you it's dangerous to give me a microphone. Next, but not least, my brother that's down there fighting the good fight with me, Representative El Holly.
All right, just fix my boot. All right. In fact, we're gonna help y'all out. Y'all repeat after me. Say L, Ma, D. L, Ma, D. That's me. So glad to be here. I'm a 6-year Georgia State Representative down in Henry County. Raise your hand if you're in Henry County. Anybody go? Okay, we got some folks here. The chair of the Henry County Legislative Delegation. I'm also the secretary for Clayton County's legislative delegation. And because of the redistricting efforts at our capital, I will, if the voters so choose, will pick up DeKalb County next year. Gerrymandering is crazy. We've had to fight that at the Capitol. I would be remiss if I didn't actually call out to a local Henry County native and Representative Derek Jackson's Alpha Phi Alpha Incorporated brother, Sherman Lofton. It was literally Sherman Lofton, a 50-some-odd-year-old African-American man who looked at his maps after the 2021 draft and said that he is being disenfranchised and saw that so many of the districts were being cut based upon race. He challenged it in federal court. There, a judge who just so happens to be African-American named Steve Jones took a look at the maps over 22 months and agreed that those maps were being drawn on the basis of race. And that one lone individual who challenged that cutting of the map based upon a violation of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 literally allowed for over exactly 236 state lawmakers to come back to the Capitol to miss the enjoyment of having a freedom to just think about Thanksgiving and the next Christmas. No, got them to get up out of their comfort zones, come back to the Capitol and redraw new maps. That's the power of one. It's the power of one, not just Sherman Lofton, but we think about so many souls who are no longer here with us, but who were in the streets, in those back alleys, down those long country dirt roads that Georgia has long had, that sits so far out of Atlanta, which unfortunately sometimes they only get the attention when there's an election cycle and we need their votes. Well, guess what? We can't keep them out in the dark anymore. Even though there's 6.4 million people living in Atlanta and 4.3 million living outside. We know that in order for us to make sure that we can look after the state, please, we ask you to join in with us when we're at the Capitol. We ain't thinking about our districts, we think about the state. Because the truth is, Georgia's a slave state. We're a state where we have an abysmal level of minority contracting, that for the $16 billion that we don't even have agencies to look at the minority participation for every agency on the contracting. It's tough when the federal government literally has to make that requirement, and because they do, of that $16 billion, if we were to apply that formula for how minority contracting, remember minority contracting, it ain't just ethnic minorities, it's also the disabled, it's veterans, it's women. They get a piece of that. If we apply that formula to the $16 billion, you know what that gets to? $22 million. $22 million. So when we're being sold down the river, it's not enough just to have faces in the right places. And now, as we heard before, not all skin folk are kinfolk. Sometimes you got to be able to make sure that you are looking at the level of equity, the amount of money being invested in our local economy, and then we have to match that up with the types of laws and whether they are prioritizing every community so that it is equitably distributed. That means that you all are doing the right thing by coming here. You're going to hear a lot of really great information. I want you to please take notes, because it's not about us being in this room. We have to make sure that the truth is spread to those who are back home. And I can tell you now, why is this election cycle so important? Because the person who is into that office and gets sworn in January will likely make the decision about who will be the next 3 Supreme Court justices. And let me tell you, they ain't picking nobody who are middle age or older. They're picking young people, which means we are literally voting this election cycle for how we want our lives and our children and our great-grandchildren's lives to be like for at least a 50-year minimum. It's important. Thank you for being here. And I want to bring up a brother that I love, and I know you all do too. He's been so actively involved, and I just appreciate this effort. You all are going to learn something really well tonight. This is Brother Chris Bruce. Please stay. We're getting started just now.
Love you too, brother.
Absolutely.
Love you too. Thank you. Thank you. You know what? I'm going to say this briefly. Thank you all for keeping it nonpartisan, okay? I know y'all said a lot of things, but hey, when it comes down to it. Executive Director Young? Oh, please. Oh, yes. I was going to bring it up, but hey, no. You brought it up.
I just want to say Sherman Lofton was represented by the ACLU. So thank you.
That's right. Somehow the ACLU got this case with Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated because their policy and advocacy director is also a brother of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Right. Again, people in the community with ties in the community, representing the community to do good in the community. And speaking of great representatives of the community, I'm going to ask our panel to come up so we can start. And while they're coming up, I have the pleasure of introducing our Deputy Policy and Advocacy Director, Fallon McClure, who's going to talk about the ACLU of Georgia and our mission as well. Y'all give it up for Fallon.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Fallon McClure. I'm the Deputy Director for Policy and Advocacy at the ACLU of Georgia. I did not know I was on the program tonight. I was like, this is Chris taking charge of this event, so it was great. Great job. But no, all seriousness. So the work that we do at the ACLU of Georgia is very important. We litigate, we lobby, we do public education, and all of that works together to bring and protect people's rights, right? And we can't do this stuff alone. So we're so grateful for the partners that are on this stage and the partners that we work with every day at the Capitol, at our litigation, and our public education events. And so we're grateful that you're all here tonight. And I think that's it for me.
That was great, Fallon. Fallon was just on Rose Scott earlier today, so just getting all the airtime. Love it. Before we begin our panel, do you guys see this QR code up here? We have a great sheet where you can follow all of these legislative bills if you actually scan this QR code. The bills that these individuals are going to be talking about are the same bills that you'll see on here. So please take out your phones, look at it, and follow along. We'll have an open discussion with the audience later on. And with that, I am going to pass it over to my good friend, John Moy.
Moy.
I've been talking a lot, brother. If you could give an introduction of yourself, the Urban League of Greater Atlanta, and the mission of what you guys stand for.
Thank you very much. And so good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming tonight. This is such a critical time, not only for our state, but for our country and for certainly for the communities that we represent. My name is John Moy. I'm the Senior Director for Policy at the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. And on behalf of Nancy Flake Johnson, our President and CEO, thank you all for coming tonight. Urban League has been around since March 15th, 1920, 104 years, doing the people's business and doing the hard work of representing you. I'm honored and privileged that I get a chance to spend time at the state capitol with Nicola and with Greg and with Brother Bruce, fighting the good fight. I wish I could come tonight and tell you that it was wine and roses, but it's not. These are very serious times. The democracy is on the line. And we need you all to jump into the fray with us, because sometimes it's just the four of us up there by ourselves. But anyway, I'm going to turn it over to my good friend, Nicola Hines with the League of Women Voters.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you coming out tonight. You could have been anywhere in Atlanta, especially with this traffic, but you decided to spend Wednesday evening with us. As John said, my name is Nicola Hines. I am the president for the League of Women Voters for the state of Georgia. The League of Women Voters in Georgia, we currently now have 13 leagues. We've added on 3 new leagues this year, and we're super excited about expanding our footprint. With 159 counties, we need as much as possible feet on the ground to help combat mis and disinformation. That is our main cause in the state of Georgia. There's a lot of stuff going on, but there's a whole bunch of mis and disinformation going on. And we actually have an elected official, and I do use this a lot, that likes to spread that here in the state of Georgia. So it's even harder for us to do that. It's so nonpartisan, I say that. LWS also. No, I'm good. We all know who she is. But but anyway, as I believe as Ms. Young had said, is that we are the legacy kind of organizations. Urban League, it was, you said March? March 20th of 1920. League of Women Voters was founded in February 14th, 1920. We were founded during the women's suffrage movement. If y'all don't know, that's the movement that came about the 19th Amendment. Okay, sorry. 19th Amendment that actually allowed constitutionally the right to vote for women. And I like to stress the word constitutional because we all know what the civil rights was about. So, but that gave women the rights to vote for the 19th Amendment. So that's what we were founded on. We are in all United States, throughout the United States. We have multiple local leagues and state leagues. So I'm gonna pass it on to my good friend, Gerald.
Thank you. I'm President Gerald Griggs. I'm the president of the Georgia State Conference of the NAACP, and I'm also the president of the Atlanta chapter of the NAACP. And we are the oldest civil rights organization in the nation and in this state. And so since 1909, we have been fighting on the front lines to protect civil rights and to push the advancement of African Americans and people of color. And so we're honored to be here with these other legacy organizations to have a conversation in Georgia about what happened under the Gold Dome. But let's be clear, civil rights are still under direct attack in Georgia. And so my good friends won't call her name, but I will. There are certain individuals who are elected officials in this state who will spread disinformation and will attempt to roll us back to a far gone era. So the Congresswoman up there in Rome, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others are leading the charge to roll us back. But we are the NAACP, which means that when we fight, we win, and we love to go to court. We love to stay outside in the streets, and we love to inform individuals of what's happening under the Gold Dome, and then when it doesn't go our way, we sue. So I'm here. I'm excited, fired up, and ready to go, and I'm looking forward to the conversation on the bills that have passed and what action we need to take to make sure our civil rights are protected.
Glad you started it that way. And again, calling out legislators is still nonpartisan, okay? Haven't mentioned a party, just probably mentioned some people that you don't agree with. So since you started it off, President Griggs, why don't you talk about some bills that you don't agree with, especially one that we're very invested in, Senate Bill 63.
So yes, as you know, down at the Gold Dome, many of the progressive organizations, that's what we will call them because we're nonpartisan, progressive organizations were on defense. And one of the most important rights that we stand in lockstep for is the First Amendment, the right to protest. Well, Senate Bill 63 was in response to all of you guys loving to go outside, loving to get in some good and necessary trouble. And so they decided that they were going to end unsecured judicial release for 30 new additional charges in the state of Georgia, including certain dangerous misdemeanor offenses like laying drag or obstruction or other things like that, which are focused on the protest. And so they also wanted to limit the amount of individuals like charitable bail funds, the amount of people that they could bond out of jail, to limit that to 3. And the reason they want to do that is because organizations have been banding together since 2020, some before that, to have charitable bail funds for those individuals who like to get in some good and necessary trouble. So now you can only bond out 3 people in a given year unless you're actually a bail bond company. And so those are some of the things that, Senate Bill 63 does. And as a licensed practicing criminal defense attorney, it's dangerous what we are seeing, because we have to remember the purpose of bond is to ensure someone returns to court. A great learned alpha male by the name of Thurgood Marshall wrote in one of his opinions that one of the most sacred constitutional rights we have is the presumption of innocence. And in order to keep that presumption of innocence, we have to make sure that before we punish somebody, they've been convicted by a jury of their peers, and they've had their due process. Well, down at the Gold Dome, there seems to be a concerted effort to roll back rights, to convict folks before they've been convicted, and to make sure we keep the streets safe from all those hardened criminal protesters. And so you've seen that over and over again. 30 new offenses, most of which are misdemeanors. And for those who don't know, a misdemeanor is a crime where you're punishable by up to 12 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. And typically on misdemeanors, there's already a fixed bond. And so what we're looking at is wealth-based detention, because many of the individuals that will be affected by this new change in the law cannot afford to post a bond. And so that's what gives rise to the issues that we've seen all over the state, whether that's the Fulton County Detention Center, Rice Street, whether that's DeKalb County's detention center, all the way down to Lowndes County. You have individuals that are in pretrial detention because they can't afford to pay a bond. And so in the previous administration under Governor Deal, he was doing a lot to reform the criminal justice system, and one of those was unsupervised, unconditional judicial release. I call them OR bonds because I've been doing this a long time. And so my fear with SB 63 is that we are seeing the hardening of the criminal justice system in Georgia. We are seeing attacks on our fundamental rights, particularly the First Amendment right to protest, because as Dr. King said, as Ambassador Young has always said, as Congressman Lewis have always said, it's our absolute duty to fight back against unfair actions of the government. And what better way to bring your redress to your government than to go outside and protest? Now, sometimes when you go outside and protest, you're in the middle of the street. And so if you're in the middle of the street, you can be charged with a low-level misdemeanor, and now you're in custody, and now there's no charitable bail fund to bail you out. So those are some of the concerns that we have about SB 63. I know that there's anticipated litigation. I won't go into all of that, but just trust that these organizations are going to push back and make sure we maintain our First Amendment rights.
You know what? I'm going to ask a quick follow-up because I'm glad you brought up Governor Nathan Deal and his task force when it came to public safety and criminal legal reform. For years, the reason why a lot of this happened was because your Department of Corrections was the third most budgetary item in Georgia's budget, literally spending hundreds of millions of dollars of locking up people, and crime was continuously going up. And then the changes that happened with that, including bail reform, for some reason you let more people out, let them get jobs, help them out. Public safety went up, crime went down. Then you had an add-on from that, from Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms passing bail reform as well on signature bonds. Again, public safety going up, crime going down. What are your thoughts about these progressive type of things done by a Democrat and done by a Republican, and now we're in a state of regression?
I think what we're having is we're in a presidential year, and so the easiest way to motivate people to vote is to make them afraid. And so in order to make somebody afraid, you have to instill fear in a narrative that crime is rising. And of course, you look at whatever statistic you want to look at in the city and the state, crime is down, violent crime is down. And so in order to build up that fear, they have to say, well, we got to have more criminals. So we got to make sure that people can't bond out of jail so that we fill the detention centers, and now we can say our jails are overflowing because crime is rampant in the city. Look at all these urban areas with all this crime, and thus we can scare the electorate into rolling things back. And so, as you mentioned, under Governor Deal and under Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms and others mayors around the state, they were moving in a progressive way to alleviate the burden of pretrial detention. Because here's the thing, pretrial detention is a burden on the system, because now you have backed up cases and a backed up case law, and you have individuals who are in custody that are now being subsidized by the taxpayer. You know, the biggest mental health facility in the state of Georgia is the detention center in Fulton County. Second is the DeKalb County. So when you start thinking about that, it's not fiscally responsible. But when you have an administration that wants to sow fear, the first thing they do is start talking about what you see on the nightly news. And let's be clear, in Georgia, the murder rate is down. In Georgia, the violent crime rate is down. In Georgia, thefts are down. The reason why you may seem to think that there's more issues happening is, one, the news, and two, we're still digging our way out of the COVID backlog. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in 2021 said it was going to take 3 years to come out of the COVID backlog. That's where we are in Fulton County, in DeKalb County, in Chatham County. Lawyers are having to help relieve the backlog. So we see that because it's an election year, we have to sow fear. And so in order to sow fear, we have to point out the boogeyman, those mean people that are brutalizing individuals. But again, statistics show the crime is down, and it was because of the progressive policies that were allowing to address the root cause of the issue, as opposed to locking folks up and throwing away the key.
I see exactly what you're saying. I know my last comment on this, you can't say it, but on Senate Bill 63, do we have anyone from Bard Business here? Amazing, amazing individuals who stood up, and the ACLU sued on their behalf. And that bill, Senate Bill 63, It's now in an injunction. It is not in place. It did not go into effect on July 1st because of these proud people in the ACLU suing on behalf of that. So we'll keep you updated. The fight is not over, so make sure you stay tuned on that.